Sycra in here, and today I'm joined by Nick, Alpaki, Bob, and Flavia, and we're going to be drawing and talking about stuff. But first, I wanted to cover the challenges from last time, and I guess we missed last week. So here's the last week's challenge was to do a mermaid, but like a fur mermaid, and then so this one's no fees, and then this one is squeebly bops. That's very cute, and this is Nick's, which got like super popular on what was it, Reddit? Anyway.
Yep.
And then this
Front
is
page of Parcel
Alpakis. Very nice. And this is Hex's bear. And this is Panch's mermaid character. And Flavia thought differently. So we have a mermaid. And then this one is Majara's. Very cool. Kind of looks like a Pokemon thing. And that was my cat sticking its tongue out mermaid. And then we also had last week's challenge, which is what was it? Wanted posters. So
yeah,
this is Flavia. Sorry for using Windows Photo Viewer. Sometimes people like send me messages of why are you using that, and it's just habit. I'm used to it, and then I use it.
How dare you?
This is Nick's. This is Hex's. Ants. Alpakis. Very cool. And this is mine from the Luffy whatever. And that's that. Okay, so we're going to be doing some drawing and taking questions, so feel free to, write questions if you have them. But I guess we can go straight to the topics. So our topic was hiccups in art, I guess. Yeah, should we start with that? So what do we mean by hiccups in art? Alpaki, what do we mean by that?
What do we mean? Okay, so we were both talking earlier about how we're, at least I'm pretty sure you are too, both sort of, we've been productive for a while, but are finally sort of hitting a wall, at least I did recently.
I did too.
And just, yeah, how that works and why, and like how to get past it and not be stuck there. I mean, for me, it was just because I was having realizations about life and being all philosophical for a couple of days, and I didn't have like the energy to do art. And I guess actually it's this thing where like I've noticed that sometimes you have to focus on art, but sometimes you have to focus on life to facilitate art. Mm-hmm. So you can focus on your art for like a long time and be like, oh well, I'll make sure it's as good as can be, and I'll do all these things. But why is my thing like this? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the drawing at the same time.
No, don't talk without drawing, and then draw when
okay.
That's what I found is a strategy that works.
It doesn't work. I cannot multitask. All right, so since sort of life informs your art, if you are just sitting inside drawing all the time, you'll have eventually run out of things to draw. And this is sort of what I ran into. And so I was just sitting there like, I've drawn everything that's on my mind for the past like 6 months, not leaving my house. And it's like, except, well, sometimes, but I sort of need to just get out so that I can have more experience in order to facilitate drawing in that way. But it still sort of sucks, right? Because you think, oh, well, I'm not progressing. It's like months of drawing nonstop, and you don't feel super, or at least I didn't feel super like I had achieved much doing that, but just like 1 or 2 days of not drawing feels awful.
Hmm.
But it's sort of getting into the flow, and I guess today will help me get back into that because we're all drawing together. Um, is kind of rough after that, but what were you struggling with?
Just a lot of life stuff, and then um, I get depressed still, and then so that's like a thing that happens. But it's happened so many times now, even with art block. It's eventually you just realize it's part of the process, and usually what will help is going on a break. Like I always feel guilty because often um, when I need a break, I am more likely to procrastinate and then get less work done. But then because I've procrastinated, I feel like I need to make up for it. Like I can't take a break. I just wasted the entire day yesterday. And I didn't really do much the day before then. Like why would I take a break? I have to make up for lost time. Um, but that's usually when you do need a break is like because otherwise it's just going to be oh, I didn't do anything today, and then so this or I didn't do anything yesterday, so today I'm definitely gonna do stuff, and then I find that it turns out bad anyway. So like, oh, what was the point of pushing myself? Then usually when I take a break, as in like go somewhere different or do something that I don't normally do, break my routine. I mean, like not just a break, as in I'm not gonna draw for a little bit because sometimes I still draw on my breaks, but just do something completely different so you give your brain a chance to recharge.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I sort of needed that, and this ties into like the other topic that we were thinking of today with like art school and such. It's I've been realizing more and more that I have this desire to sort of like go out and meet people and like have people that I have stuff in common with
Mm-hmm.
in person instead of just online. And I think until I'm able to do that, I will sort of be suffering in the art department because uh, I'm sort of just in the point in life where I need that. And if I'm stagnant in life, I'll probably be stagnant in art. So it's like kind of it's around that time for me to go out and do that. And I guess um, I don't know. I think that will eventually that'll help. And so I've been thinking about that, but it's a tricky subject.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before as well. Like the thing with art school is a lot of times people think it's like this is where they'll go to learn skill, but I feel like in a lot of cases art school is more for the people you meet, and that's a lot more hard to come by. Like you can be self-taught, but doesn't mean you get to meet people. So um,
Hmm. I think there's such a focus on going to art school, and I've talked to people about this when I'm trying to like pick schools because I think that's my next step. And there's such a focus on like concept art or like for the industry or this or that. And I'm realizing just that the thing that turned me off art school all this time is just that I don't think I want to do that. I think I would like to go just for the sake of meeting people, as silly as it sounds, like as a financial thing, and also just to like have a excuse to sort of just do art all the time without feeling stagnant, and just
mhm.
have like people around me that are helping me grow. Um, I don't know. I guess just what works for some people, and the advice is so specific. And to say, oh, don't go to this school. This school's not any good. They don't teach you the things you need to know. And a school that would suck for a concept artist might be like the best school for me. Like I'm as much as I've always looked down on it, a school where it's like we're gonna do a bunch of weird mixed media stuff today, and I'm gonna tell you the history about like I don't know, insert random art medium here, metalworking. It's like you know what? That sounds like it could be fun. I could get behind that. I don't need to like I don't want to like work at Blizzard as like the next big concept artist or anything.
Well,
Um,
there's this big stigma, right, about oh, are you artsy fartsy, and there's the cams and it's us versus them kind of thing. Oh, it's not serious unless it's like hardcore concept art. And
I've heard people talking about for their goals, this makes sense for them to feel this way, but people that are trying to get into like art center and stuff, and they're like, oh, well, I got into illustration, and illustration, that's where the shit artists go. And it's like, oh, but what if they just want to learn illustration? Like, what if they don't want to learn concept art, you know? And they'd be sitting there all day, like, learning concept art that they're not going to have any use for. It's like, I think everyone has like a different thing.
Yeah.
Who knows? Different goals.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been interesting to talk to people about their perspectives on things.
Yep.
Let's see what we. Yep.
Okay. Let me just take a question.
Yeah, I can look around because I'm in a break. Question: when you get the chance, how do you deal with forcing yourself to work in the context of commissions?
It's tough lately. Like when you don't feel good, it can be really hard. Like I know what I'm supposed to do. I even know how long it regularly takes me. It's not hard. I can totally do it. And then there's just like no motivation. But because it is like a job, I feel like you have to do it anyway. I feel like sometimes I'll take again, if I can get away with taking a break, I'll take a break. But there are times where you can't get away with it, and then you kind of have to just be like, okay, well, this is what you're paid for. You better just do it. Try your best and do it. But if I wasn't in the situation where it's like deadlines and expectations and stuff, then I think I would just take a break and not really worry about it too much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take over questions so you can deal with your drawing for a bit.
I'm trying my best to do both. It's not working.
It doesn't. It's
I'm
very
sorry,
hard.
I told you.
It's very hard.
I suddenly sympathize with you. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
How to?
Yeah, it's very. That's why I look at people who are streamers, and it's amazing to me, especially if they're like playing a game, talking to chat, and also trying to be like entertaining and stuff. And they're also sometimes moderating chats as well. Like, oh, is it getting too toxic or anything?
DMing people on the side at the same time and everything. Like,
Paideia
setting
says,
plans up.
is there no chat magma studio today? There is. If you scroll all the way up, you should see there was a link. Did it disappear?
I didn't see it either.
Oh, how unfortunate.
It didn't get posted. Oh.
It did get, like, I did post it. I posted it.
Yeah, but it must have gotten cut out.
Yeah. I'll repost it. Thanks for
thanks for pointing it out, Paideia.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's the viewer board. Maybe it's now where if you go live, it just like purges everything before you went live.
Oh, it maybe.
Cool Knight says, does Sycra watch One Piece? No, I did for a little bit because I was told like, oh, it gets better and you should stick with it. And I watched maybe 300 episodes or something.
That's a lot of stuff.
I was like, okay.
When does it get better?
Well, I think it's very fine for people who like it. I'm just not into the whole pirate thing too much. Like, it's fine. It just was not my cup of tea. But it's very long. Whoa. Okay, Paidia asks, do you think artistic work is different when it comes to endurance in comparison to a typical 9 to 5 job, for example? Does creative work inherently require a different approach and or more flexibility? Yeah, I think so. It's very, like, I could do so much more work if I was doing, I think, if I was doing manual labor jobs. Like, no, probably not for me because I have no stamina. But just the fact that it's creative, like, there's the other part of it too where it's personal. So not only is it like, well, I've got to use creativity and create something that doesn't exist, but sometimes you're emotionally invested as well. Whereas in a normal 9 to 5 job, especially if you're working for like a company, chances are you're not as emotionally invested. It's like you want to, I would hope you would want to do a good job, but that doesn't mean it's the same. But yeah, creative things are very strange. I remember watching a thing where there was a guy who was a composer, and he was tasked with doing a composition thing for this quartet, I think it was, and he spent most of his time like walking on the beach and just relaxing and stuff, and not doing the thing. And then they were getting kind of pissed off because he was supposed to have a lot done so that they could start practicing and stuff. And then it just seemed like, wait, you're just slacking off. And then he was like, oh, this is important to, good ideas don't come unless you like live life and you're engaged with life and the world. And a part of me was like, really? This seems kind of suspect. And then, but then it worked. Like his composition turned out fine. Everyone was happy. And it really let me see that, okay, this creative process is different. And even when you think of things like just doing what you like, sometimes, I know for myself it's this way, but there's like this idea that you have a job and that means it's got to be kind of work. So when I do commissions or things and it feels hard, it almost feels like I'm doing the right thing. Like, yes, it's hard, you're doing a job, that's why you're getting paid. Whereas if it's fun and it's easy, there's this feeling of like, oh, I'm just slacking off. Like, this isn't good, it can't be good. Why? Because it was actually pretty easy and fun. People aren't going to like it. And then, so sometimes I'll take something, and the truth is it's the opposite, right? Whenever you do something that's easy and fun and you enjoyed it, it's usually the best stuff that you can come up with. And other people kind of see that. But then, I know for myself, I'll think, okay, I did the fun, quick sketch that I like, but there's no way that's acceptable. So let me make it labored. Let me put in way more hours and then achieve a result that's like, this must be better because I'm miserable about it now. And I mean, if you put in enough work, it does still look good. So there will be the feeling of, yes, it's fine. But if you compared it to the sketch and then you ask someone like, which do you prefer? I think in a lot of cases it would be the sketch.
I noticed that like I've worked a lot of manual labor jobs and they're all a lot easier than going home and drawing on the weekends or something. To just get through it, you aren't worried about every little technical thing or what people think about you. It's like, okay, this needs to be gone from A to B. You need to get this like box moved somewhere or shovel a bunch of stuff or cut these rods. And it's like, okay, if the rod isn't cut at a 90-degree angle, they're not going to care. You can still attach like other rebar to it on a construction site. It's like, whatever. But then you get home and you're like, oh, this is my life's work. I have to make this perfect and beautiful. But it just, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so much harder.
there's like pressure, and there's also you in there. Like, if this is your life's work and it's not good, what does that say about you? It's like, oh my god, it's but if it was just like, oh, take out the trash or something like that in your job, or stock shelves, it's like, okay, well, if I don't do a good job, that's like, well, I should try to do a good job, but it's not the end of the world. And it doesn't reflect on you as a person besides your laziness. And there is this feeling of like, well, you're just having a bad day. But it's harder with art, I think.
Yeah. And there's so much more understanding of self when you're like, oh, I didn't sleep well last night, that's why I'm sluggish, I'm whatever. But it's like, no, it's my brain. That's no excuse. And my brain should still be functioning just the same, even if I am tired from doing this physical thing or from working all week or something. But it's so much easier.
Isn't that what we keep being taught, that mental health things are not really real, and literally it's all in your head, so it's imaginary?
I mean, people say the opposite now. There's plenty of people who will talk about how you should sort of respect mental health.
That's true, but I think that's just for this generation, because I think that the voices we have in our head tend to be our parents. And our parents' judging voices were built in the previous generation. So even if for us, contemporaries will be like understanding and sort of accepting of this is real, even if it's quote unquote in your head, I think for us, we're still going to have the intolerant voices.
Yeah, that's
well,
what
the lights turned off.
That's what I what was I gonna say before you said the lights turned off? I mean, darn.
Oops.
Golly gee.
I don't remember. Oh well.
Let me see.
Okay.
Do you want a new question? So,
yeah.
Addison Fantas says, question: do you want to draw something with everyone today, Sycra? What?
I am drawing. I have my little guy.
Sycra is drawing.
I'm doing it.
He's doing it.
He's doing it.
Now I'm just keep thinking about what was it? What were you talking about before? Because it's bothering me that I can't remember.
Who?
I think Flavia or Alpaca. I think Flavia was talking about it. Oh,
I think I was talking about how the voices
something.
the voices that we have in our heads are still built.
Oh, I remember what I was going to talk about. How
Go ahead.
people give advice, like parents and stuff, but the reality is the world the child of the parent is growing up in is very different than the world that the parent grew up in. So it's not like so much is just not applicable of advice that people give, because it's like, yeah, this might have worked 30 years ago. That doesn't mean that's the way the world is now.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think a lot of these social constructs that are built on observations of what society you actually form in. So it's kind of like, well, you learned how to manage the world by interacting with, again, your parents' contemporaries, and that's not the case. It's not going to be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
No.
All right. So, do you guys have any specific video/channel/people/guides on rendering your drawings, specifically people/skin/clothes? I've seen Sycra's vids on these already, but I just want some more tips.
I know Cynics has one on skin, painting skin. You could check that one out.
I remember Addison said that one was very useful, actually. have. Benjamin Root says, thanks for making all these videos. You're one of the first people, first online artists I started to watch.
Yeah.
To extend on the previous question, I know that brute forcing is an option. I don't like to leave it as a last resort because of the burnout worry.
Yeah, I mean, brute forcing can work, and it usually shows though. Like, I don't know, you can have, like, basically for every piece of advice, there's always an exception. You know, like, oh, people said don't do this, but I tried that and it was just fine. It's like, yeah, it can work. Just it may not be optimal to use in the long run, like a strategy to employ for the long run. It just could be more like, yeah, this works now. That doesn't mean it'll work always.
I think a big thing for commissions for me was like mental reframing. Like because I would have that issue too, where oftentimes I would get a commission and I would brute force it, and it, like, you can see in the drawing that it's like, just I hate it as I'm creating it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something that helped was to just not worry as much about things and to just try to have some level of fun with it. Because I don't think anyone's going to be upset if you add little Easter eggs or fun things into your commission or make it interesting somehow. Maybe you do a really dynamic pose that interests. Just like find some way to make it that you can get something out of it.
Yeah, you can't do that for
it depends how
work,
professional.
Because
yeah,
my brother was telling me that I asked him, like, oh, do you ever put Easter eggs in your because he works for an animation studio, and then I'm like, do you ever put Easter eggs in? And he's like, no, you'll get fired. So
wow, that's depressing.
it's not worth
this
it.
This is advice based on I think because I know that's Brian Brunrab's question. Yeah, so I know the type of stuff Brian does.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe not if you work at Disney or something. Maybe don't do that.
Yeah, they're not as tolerant as they once were, it seems, with these things.
Addison asks, do y'all have thoughts on playing some light music in the background?
Oh, for these
Of the
streams?
stream to remove the tension?
I
Oh,
don't know. I feel like I'm always confused about music, because if I was watching a stream, would I want music or would I want my own music? Like, what if someone has just completely different music tastes? So, I don't know. I know you can get like AI generated music now, which is pretty good. Where you just, what was it called?
Oh.
It was draw something. There's like a specific site that I was gonna use. Sound Draw or Sound Raw. Oh, because it's raw sound, and I, being an artist, thought it was draw. Okay, so Sound Raw. One word, you can get music that AI makes for you, and it's usable in streams and stuff. So yeah, maybe. I just wouldn't want to, if someone else is like listening to their own music and then that's going to clash, so then they can't, and I don't know.
Addison, I would argue that we're so interesting we don't even need it. That's how cool all of us are. Okay, let's see. Nub Nub says, how long does it usually take for you to finish an art piece?
oh, depends.
It's like, if it's a default commission, it usually takes a week or two. But that's not necessarily like it takes a week or two in terms of you spend all that time drawing, because then it would be like, oh, but I've seen you draw a picture at this quality in like 5 hours, or like 3 hours, or oh, one time you were live and you did a thing really quickly, and it's like Yes, but it's different for work when, especially because like the processes have to be different when you consider doing work. I mean, not always, but for me they are different when I consider doing client work because you need to make sure everything is like on its layer. You need to make sure there's consistency, and to achieve all of that, it feels like it takes a lot longer because you can't judge yourself based on your on days. Like, oh, this day I was in the zone, and then I just came up with a picture and it looked really good. You kind of have to learn what your average is, and then make sure that, well, what if you have a really bad day, or a couple of bad days? Okay, so add that to the average, and then that's kind of how long it takes you to actually finish an image on average, because you have to look for the reality of how things actually are, and not just the optimal, like, oh, under perfect circumstances, this is how long it takes me.
Yeah, it's good to calculate in like the worst. Okay, let's see. LOL play deathcore exclusively. I agree. Could be fun to try it out. Something calming, maybe jazz, but I'm not sure if it would be distracting. We could maybe. We'll see. We'll play around with that. Yes, y'all are too cool. I agree. I have a question. Have you ever tried to make a story / comic? Sycra, have you ever tried to make a comic?
Still
Nah.
trying. Still trying. I've never succeeded, but I've tried. I mean, yeah, I've done some, and think most people here. I don't know, Flavia. You've worked with me though on.
Yeah, I don't think it counts because I personally don't really have much of a pull towards making comics. I think I'm definitely more interested in animation, if anything, but even that I don't really do. I feel like if I put story, I prefer it actually to be in a single image. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
But there's someone here who can't stop making stories and stuff. It's not saying anything though.
Yeah, has anyone here ever tried making a story? God. Nick?
Maybe. Yeah. Well, I've had to spend the last week without a PC. I feel very rusty, but I enjoyed my little journey back into the sketchbook. Yeah, doing rough scratchy pen work.
Yeah, those were nice to see on the Discord.
On the Discord. Addison Fanta asks, how often do y'all vacuum or keep your art space clean? How clean is your art space, or is it hella messy?
Oh my god, Addison, why must you? Why must you ask?
Expose yourselves now. Go, one by one, line up.
I can't really focus if my space is too messy, so I have to clean it up or tidy it up, because there's a difference between, like, oh, if there's just cat hair floating around, but the stuff is tidy, I can focus more than if everything's clean but in the wrong place. So I don't know.
I have this issue too. I actually noticed that it's really important for me is I'm away from home right now, but usually when I'm at home, I notice the biggest difference maker I can actually make as to whether or not I will draw is by cleaning my room up and like cleaning my space up. And I'm like tenfold more likely to be really productive if it's like, even if there's one strand of dog hair on my floor, I will not be able to draw. So I just clean all of them, and then I can draw like for 6 hours. That's fine, but just has to do that first.
That is quite a high bar.
I know Sycra will have something to say. Oh, sorry, Bob.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you guys mind if I start filling in the background?
Go ahead.
No, that's cool.
Okay.
This is just a comment, but I think Sycra would have something to say about it. So I love making stories, and I want to make a comic of my own, but I'm not very good at anatomy, but I'm still working on character designs.
Oh, yeah. Well, anatomy is something you will... Like, you do want to get better at it at a certain point, but I think it's... With all the fundamentals, there's sort of a time where... I mean, there's no real time limit, that's what I meant to say. You can kind of work on things out of order, and it'll still work. So what you're probably doing with character design, it sounds like, is focusing more on the design aspect. And that's very good, because that's very important. And then you can start applying anatomy to that. Sometimes you don't even have to treat it like an individual separate subject. Like, I'm going to study anatomy. What you can do is, whatever you're drawing, you can find anatomy for that specific thing. Like, let's say I was drawing a character and it was a back view and I wasn't sure about the back view. Well, I can find references and then solve that. Okay. And then another time I'm drawing a forearm and I'm having trouble with, like, how the elbow connects. I can sort of just find references and deal with the thing I'm having trouble with, and somehow, because it's specific to the task at hand, I'll remember it more than if I try to learn everything and then deal with that, because everything is difficult. But something is not as difficult. So if you try and do everything, it's like, oh, this can be tough. But if you're limited in what you try to tackle, then usually yields better results.
And you'll probably remember the things you learn more if you have a specific goal for them. So if you have a character that wears a lot of metal, you'll be like way more invested when you're studying like a metal study or something, and you'll end up learning, or in your case, anatomy, because you'll be like, oh, well, my character is really buff and I want them to have big muscles, so you'll be way more attentive, at least in my experience, and probably learn more than if you just did random muscle studies and were only half paying attention or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. If you do art for a living, doesn't that ruin the fun of doing it?
Sometimes, yeah. Like,
Okay.
it's something you have to kind of work on, where at first my way of dealing with that fun aspect was to make sure I always injected a bit of myself into the piece. So I would try and think, okay, this is what I want to do, and I've got this idea and I want to do the best work possible. But that can sometimes backfire when the client wants revisions that go against that, and it can get very depressing. So now what I do is I try to, yes, add stuff and try and do a good job. Like, this is another thing I found is, if someone commissions me for a low price, I will not do a half-assed job. Like, try to treat well, this is what I think anyway. I'm not saying this is necessary for everyone to do, but what I try to do is try to do a good job on everything. And the reason is because that's a lot more difficult, it's more challenging, and so your brain is more stimulated. Whereas if it gets too routine and easy and you're not pushing yourself, you can actually get, like, it might sound good at first, like, oh, then I can just pump out work. But what I found is I don't just pump out work, I actually get really bored. It becomes extremely monotonous, and then I just don't want to do it anymore. So, like, trying really hard, trying to do a good job, I think can be very effective as well, as a way of keeping the fun in it, because it's hard. And then it's like, oh, it's a weird kind of, it's because it's not like super fun in a traditional sense, but at least it's fulfilling. I think fulfillment is very important, like more than just fun as a concept, like fulfillment.
I agree.
Let's see. Question: do y'all have any art hanging on your walls? Do y'all have friends' artworks hung up too? Like, is something going to fill the empty space at the bottom of the piece y'all... Oh, okay, those are different. The like was just an addition from Addison. So, do you guys have anything hanging on your wall? Any fun art?
We have a lot of Ovopack stuff upstairs that we framed.
And we also have a few of my favorite paintings, like printed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how
And
about...
then
Oh, go ahead.
some marmots that are drying, and then there's no place to store them, but on the walls.
Where they belong.
I mean, marmot paintings, not marmots that are drying.
How about you
Oh,
guys?
God.
Nick, how's your stuff in terms of, do you have art on the walls?
I have collages I've made on the fridge. I cut up like magazines and stuff and just not really thinking. And I find that kind of therapeutic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I also quite like surreal art. I can't think of any examples at the moment, but yeah, I like that sort of thing.
I have a couple pictures just of some people I've seen at conventions who do this one guy I have who did some good abstract pieces that I have that I got at some old comic con in Boston. But I think that's about all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I've been practicing gesture drawings, the line of action, but the poses I want don't match the personality of my characters. I make sure to use references.
Yeah, I think it's, when you do gesture drawing, I think it's more like you're trying to discover what line of action is so that you can apply it on your own, from stuff from imagination, not necessarily like using it as a thing in and of itself. Like, I'm going to find like, you could do that, and if you were doing that, you would likely hire a model. I mean, that's what people did in the past more, but you'd hire a model, and then you would have them take the pose that you want so you don't lose a personality. But I think nowadays it's not really as common to do that, and there's a lot more reference available. Like, you can get like photo packs from, I know Graphite Studio has a bunch, Grafit, I think. They have a bunch of these like photo packs, and there's a lot of them where you probably could find like the ideal pose. But generally, what I think is try to think of the action more than the reference. So in animation, for instance, what you do is you'll use a reference and get the gesture of that reference down and then change the character. So the gesture is the same, the character is different. So you're always thinking about, how does this gesture appear? How do you deal with that, as opposed to what does it look like? So because a gesture can be anything. Like, it's not. Let's see if I can do an example of like a gesture that's not about. I'll do it here. So let's say I wanted someone picking something up and it's heavy. I'll do like this. So like, I know there's like, okay, your back is like hunched over, your head's like lower, your shoulders go down, your arms are like kind of, in this case, let's say they're locked, and then your feet are kind of far apart because this thing is heavy. Okay, so that gesture is because I've gotten used to feeling like, well, what does the body do? But it's not necessarily something you could show as like, oh, this is this character, or this is this person or something. It's more like you try to, like, the point of gesture drawing is you memorize how the body does things, what happens, like look at a gesture but analyze it. So the analysis portion of it is very, very important. So why do, like, another way to do it without reference is take the pose yourself. That can help a ton. Like, look in a mirror is useful, but even if you don't look in a mirror and you perform the act, you can feel in your body roughly what's going on, and you make observations for that, and then you can start to apply them to a lot of things. Like, for instance, with material study, if I wanted to make something shiny, like, let's say I want to make this frame shiny. Like, oh, let's say it's made out of gold. I know, like, okay, so what's gonna happen with that material? Well, you're gonna have like a lot of value contrasts. You're gonna have highlights that are a lot more yellow, things like that. And then you can, like, yellows, oranges, and browns are pretty prevalent. So it's not like I'm looking at reference of gold. It's just that I've kind of memorized some of the ways of conveying that feeling, and then I can apply that to other pieces. So you're just looking for things that are believable, not necessarily things that are correct. And the same can be said for gesture, where you're dealing more with how, like, what happens when you want to create a certain look. What happens in the body. So by taking the pose yourself, it can really help. And sometimes I've seen people do things like they'll take photo reference of someone in a pose. So for instance, this person's supposed to be carrying a very heavy two-handed sword. And so they'll pick up like a broom or ask the model, like, here, hold this broom, and then I'm going to replace it with a sword. But the model will just hold the broom as if it's like they're just taking the pose, but they're not imagining that it's a very heavy sword. So they won't get the gesture right. So it's kind of important to do things that carry, like, act. Like, acting is very important. Believe in the thing so that you get the appropriate thing of what really happens. So usually if something is heavy, there is a counter in the body. So for instance, let's say I'm holding a heavy grocery bag in one of my hands. I will tend to lift my shoulder up and push my body to the opposite side to counterbalance that weight. And you might think, oh, so when you're holding a heavy thing, the weight pulls you down, so your shoulder that's holding, let's say it's my right hand, is holding a bag that's heavy. You might think, oh, your shoulder goes down because you're holding the heavy thing, and the heavy thing is pulling you down, right? And it's like, no. Or your right shoulder goes down. It's like, no, actually the opposite. Your right shoulder goes up, and your left side pushes off center to make up for the weight, so that the distribution is even. Yeah.
Alrighty. You all are awesome. I wanted to ask, what's a good way to practice shading/light source? I've been drawing the basic shapes with core shadows and cast shadows from Pinterest, but is there a better way? From Elated.
I made a video on this recently. I think it was critique. I think it was for
Addison. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, and I just tried to explain how to transfer this. Like, if you think of it just in terms of the shape itself, and you're just doing these studies, it can again get overwhelming. Because I started this way, where someone said, if you can't draw, like if you can't shade an egg, it's very hard to shade anything else. So I was told to like make a still life and put an egg there. The problem is in it, like if you look at a Loomis book, an Andrew Loomis like tutorial how to draw this or that, it will simplify how shading works. But when you do things in real life, if you don't have the right lighting setup, it doesn't work that way. So I had an egg, but the egg was being affected by the room it was in. There was a lot of bounce light, and the core shadow therefore was not where I thought it should be. It was more like I didn't understand. I thought, oh, so I just have to draw what I see. Actually, no. It's better if you learn the formula that sort of is convincing than to just replicate what is true in reality. So check out the Addison video, because I think that could help a lot with how to translate these forms. Okay.
Great. Let's see. Also, have you watched Lackadaisy? It's a mini pilot that has aired here on YouTube.
I have not.
I have not either. Do you think painting has much of a future compared to other arts?
Yeah, I think people will paint. Like, I don't know. Maybe
Especially traditional.
professionally. I feel like a lot of these problems are only professional in terms of will people still do this thing or that thing? It's like, I feel like if you're only doing art because someone's paying you, you're probably doing it for the wrong reason. And so you needn't worry too much about whether or not it has a future. I think in some ways, like, take this with a grain of salt, but in some ways it's useful to consider that you're never going to make money with art. Like, I'm doing this thing. Would I still do it even if I don't make any money ever with it? And if the answer is yes, then you're probably doing it right. And if the answer is no, I wouldn't do this unless I was getting a good salary or something, then I think you should probably find something outside of art to do. Okay.
I've been told.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
I was just going to
I'm going
answer
through the
Albrun question because it's been not answered.
You can answer
for
the
a
Albrun
while.
question. I'll go back to Thomas Murphy later.
Okay. Album asks, besides what's already been said about art school, has anyone here gotten a degree in something along the lines of art/graphic design? Do you think it's overrated or worth it at all? What I've noticed is no matter what, it doesn't matter about degrees or anything. The good ones are good because they did stuff themselves. Like, whether they went to school or not, they tend to be very self-motivated, driven, and they're doing the work. I don't know many people who, for instance, just... I don't know if this is fair, because I don't know enough about graphic design. So speaking of illustration, a lot of times the best ones are self-taught, and they just work hard. But if they went to school, they wouldn't be worse. Just because that's that's the way they work. They have a good work ethic. So, yeah. Okay, go ahead with the Thomas Murphy thing. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. I've been told to review a job through a Venn diagram structure of fast, cheap, and good, and that it's possible to incorporate all three into a project. Don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, we were always told you can only get two. And the third one is the sacrifice. So you can have it fast and cheap, but it's not going to be good. You can have it fast and good, but it's not going to be cheap. Or you can have it cheap and good, but it's not going to be fast. So it makes sense to me, like, because I think that's actually how it pans out, unless someone's really bad at business, which I am. So sometimes I've not done that according to those rules, but generally it makes sense that you would have 2 of 3. If you're fast, cheap, and good, you're probably undercharging, which is fine. You'll get a lot of clients really fast, but then in the end, what happens is you'll probably burn out and everyone will hate you for lowering the prices that much.
Okay, Stemple Temple asks, have any of you used AI to speed up the workflow on art pieces in some way? I'll say, just for me personally, I have not, but I have messed around with, like, it's been helpful in the way for me of, basically it's like an idea generator where, like, it wasn't even helpful necessarily. It's just I was trying to make something in AI and I was like writing this really specific prompt to see, like, oh, how does AI work? I'm curious, I'll try it out. And then I realized it wasn't making what I wanted, so I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna go make it myself. And it was like inspiration, because I'm like, now I have an idea of exactly the image I want because I've written it all down, and so now I can just like make it. And so it was helpful in that way.
Yeah, I have tried as well for like, oh, would this make it easier? And then usually it's like there's nothing of the AI that remains, but I would say it's as it gets better, that's going to change. So probably it will just be necessary at some point.
Alrighty. Let's see. Okay, so Johnny the Artsy Fart mentioned that he had a bachelor's in illustration, graduated in 2020, and he's still freelancing. So he doesn't think the connections were worth it, but he thinks the experience and professors were worth the money. That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Sycra, what do you think about mixing multiple methods of constructing the figure from Beyond Lazy?
I'm not sure what you mean by multiple methods, but I would say whatever works for you. Like, if you have a specific, even if it's like some ass backwards way of working that everyone says is really dumb, if it works for you, do it. That's what I would recommend. Like, it's fine.
Let me see if I missed any. I think that's it for questions. Let me know if I missed any.
Okay. Oh yeah, with the painting thing, does it have? It was like, does it have much of a future compared to other arts? I don't know, because compared to what exactly? Like, I can see how in a lot of cases, comics or animation might be more difficult for to be completely outright replaced. I feel like illustration is definitely right at the point of it's in danger. Concepting is harder, but it's just a matter of time, right? It's like, oh, AI is not good at this, and then next stream maybe there's been like an update, and then oh, never mind, no, it totally is. It's fine.
Well, it can't make a pizza yet, though. I mean, even though it's taken our jobs, and then like 2 days later, oh
yeah,
damn it,
makes
they
it.
made
Well,
pizza.
technically, they already have a AI factory making pizza. So.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, they got pizza.
Yep.
Oh, not pizza. Anything else? Would you respect your AI Would you respect your AI version of yourself if you were able to meet them? I think we talked about this in the past. I think I can speak for a lot of the people here when I say no, because I think you need self-respect to respect yourself, right?
Ouch.
Um, how would you think the world would be without any forms of art? I think it'd be very boring.
Yeah, I don't even know how to think about that without any forms of art, because it's like art's in everything. Like, even when it's not, it usually was, and then it's I preferred the old one, where they, like, maybe you look at 70s or 80s cars where they were very boxy, and someone could say like, oh, in the 50s they designed with like curves and stuff, and it was so much more interesting in terms of the design. And it's like, yeah, but I know people who really like those 80s boxy cars.
I love
So-
80s boxes cars.
Yeah, so even then, it's like, because art is subjective, if there was no art, there's probably someone who would think that's like, maybe there's like a naturalist who's like, I just love nature. And then, well, does nature still exist? Yes. Okay, well, then that is the greatest artist or something still exists, and they're still making work.
Yeah, I think it's like difficult because even if, like, can you not do would culture even exist at that point? Because half of culture is just art. Like you can't even like sing a hymn about your cows as you're feeding them in a world where there's no art. I mean, I don't know if they mean just paintings, but like it would be pretty stale. We would not advance very fast, I think.
Yeah. Beyond Lazy asks, is there a roadmap to learning digital art for beginners? I think so. I think there's a lot of people who have things. The problem is, like, beginners is not a person. Like, are you beginners? Like, the thing is, everyone's individual, so we all have different ways of learning. And so even if something is effective for a lot of people, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be effective for you. So yeah, it's, I don't know.
I think just the roadmap for learning digital art as a beginner is like getting an implement to draw digital art and then playing with it. And then if you don't like playing with it and you're like, dang, I need guidance, then you go get guidance. But if you're like, dang, I don't want to watch all these tutorials, then you just mess around with it and, you know, eventually you figure it out. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Do you consider writing as an art something subjective?
Yeah.
For example, can you say the quality of a story is 100% subjective?
Yes. Like, I think everything is subjective because but it's subjective in an like, you can be kind of objective in your subjectivity. So, for instance, okay, a story, right? Let's say there's a story. Okay. Is it good subjectively? Well, let's say you asked 1 million people. So that's a pretty big focus group. Is this story good? And let's say the majority of them agreed, yes, it's good. Okay, where are the majority of those people? So when are the majority of those people? So for instance, if I sampled 1 million people in North America right now, that's going to be completely different than a sample of 1 million people in China 500 years ago. So you could say, well, there are parallels, but then even then, it's subjective to a human experience, and what type of human, and where did they grow up. So everything is like actually just subjective in a sense, because even an idea of health, it's like health to whom. So let's say we are healthy and health is represented by symmetry. It's like, okay, sure, but then what about the bacteria? It's like, whose perspective are you looking from? Or a virus, you know, that, well, they don't get to exist. So it's, I don't know. I don't think anything is not subjective, but I do think there are ways of making better stories for subjective humans, like people who see things subjectively. There are things that work better. So, for instance, I would say like generalize it and then call that objective, and that's fine. But it's still a generalization. So understand it's not like, oh, someone doesn't agree with this generalization, therefore they have bad taste. It's more like someone doesn't agree with this generalization because it's a generalization and it's not specific. Yeah, let's see.
Alrighty. So Addison asks, what's a movie y'all recommend that's visually stunning? Stunning.
Ooh, I have that one. My favorite visual movie is called Bajirao Mastani, and it has probably the best sets that I've seen. The best like coordination, opulence, and all that stuff. It's a Bollywood movie, and yeah, that one. I would recommend it.
Off the top of my head, Alberto Mielgo things like anything he's made is usually visually stunning. I thought way back when that Doctor Strange fractal stuff was really visually impressive. I don't think that's new though, but I think there's been like more movies that came out since, but I recall that one was pretty impressive.
But that's even newer than Bajirao, so then I recommended an oldie.
What about Tarkovsky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tarkovsky films are visually stunning.
Yeah.
I really like Terrence Malick films, like Tree of Life. I think is visually stunning. Okay, guess
I would say probably, I think I've said this before on here maybe, but Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust.
Yeah, that one's nice.
One's beautiful.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, next in the questions. We've got a couple since then. A story is a series of events. There's cause and effect and inherent logic. To understand the events, it needs to make sense and have urgency. If consistency breaks, then many things break. Beyond Lazy asks, how do you study art from artists whose art you want to integrate bits and pieces of into your own? I would say just do a study of them, I guess. or like try to analyze what parts you specifically like about their work and like do a study off of them and focus on those areas and like what you're interested in instead of just the whole piece.
Yeah, I kind of do two ways right now. One is where I will just look at what they're doing and observe it. Like I won't do studies. Actually, I'm just trying to get the concept. And then the other way that I found is often effective is just tracing it, like outright. Or let's say you want to learn their colors, like just color pick what they pick and then do that enough that you start to see patterns in what they do. Or like you'll start to see, oh, I would have picked this other thing. This is how they did it. And that's what the tracing does for me is I'll pretend I'm drawing it. Like, oh, if I was going to do a copy of this, what line would I have made here? And because I've drawn so much, I kind of know what I would have done. And then when I trace, it's like correcting my hand as, oh, that's not what that's not what they did. And it sort of helps me process, oh, so this is what I should have done instead. And here's where I would have messed up. Whereas if I just use it as if I copy without tracing, what I find is that I will make my version of what their thing is and not necessarily the thing itself. But you can get there. Like, I find that's fast, but you can also just do tons and tons of drawings and you'll pick it up. Powerfrog asks, while studying art, I found a personal problem with color blindness. It's not full color blindness, but I learned that I see a lot less red than everyone. Yeah, I would say, like, you can work with it, like lean into it in a way, and it can be fine. It can. There's different ways of handling this. You could, show someone who isn't colorblind and ask them, does this look right? Is this fine? Or if you're not working for someone else, but you're just doing personal pieces, you can just make it like that's your signature, that you see the world that way, and that's fine.
I know specifically.
Sorry,
I was just going to say real quick, I know specifically that if you look up on YouTube, there's a professional artist who is, I think, red-green colorblind or something. I don't know exactly colorblind terminology. But he talked about his entire process of making sure that his work is, like, studio ready, despite his colorblindness, and he gets through it. So you could probably look that up and find his exact process.
Mm-hmm. Paideia says, without consistency, character motivations are arbitrary, tension is lost, and immersion breaks. I think there's elements of subjectivity, but a good chunk of writing is objective. Yeah, I mean, if you want to think of it that way, you can think of it that way. It's kind of like the free will discussion. Like, oh, does it exist? I don't think so. Should you act as if it doesn't exist? I also don't think that's right. So, I think, like, just in terms of the rules, like, yeah, there's not an objective thing. I think it's subjective. But in terms of, like, well, practical matters, yeah, there are ways of, like, generally making things more palatable, making sure your character has a motivation, making sure they undergo a character arc. All these things are going to making sure there's enough conflict in your story. Having a message, things like this are like, well, they're not objectively true in some sense, but generally more people will respond to your story positively if you do. So, Powerfrog says, I have problems like when I color a character blue and discover that he is purple, or I color yellow and discover I did orange. What is a workaround I could use for it? That one's super easy. It sounds like your hue shifts are consistent. So you go into, like, whatever program, like Photoshop or something, you just open up the hue saturation and you just move the hue slider and everything should shift. If that's what it is, like, if your thing is just everything's moved in one direction, you can just, like, slide it back. Yep. And you can even learn, from asking someone. Let's say it's hard for you to judge, so find someone who isn't suffering from that and then ask them, when does it look right? And maybe it's like a -7 hue shift, and then you can just apply that to every image you ever do. It's like, okay, hit Control U, bring up hue saturation, go into the hue panel and type in -7, and then OK, and then you'll have corrected it.
It's a very, very, very important question. What do you guys think of the newer generation? Generation Z?
I think it's very difficult because we aren't all the same age group in this chat. So when you say newer generation, we'll all have different ideas of what that is. For me, Alpaki is like super new. He's like in the new generation. But then Alpaki would have other people who are in the newer generation.
Like infants and stuff. Oh, right. I always think Nick is like 14 years older than me or something. That's just the intellectual
gap. Is
Nick
the youngest here?
Nick's, what, you're a year older than me. You're like 23?
Yep. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. I don't know. It gets harder and harder as you get older to relate to the younger generation, but it's always that way anyway. I feel like it's just a recurrent thing that enjoy being in the relevant generation while you are, because it'll change.
But when you get older, you can make Facebook memes about how much you hate the new generation, and you can all laugh together at the new generation. So it's fun.
Not if Facebook doesn't exist.
That's true.
Like when I was growing up, Facebook wasn't a thing. So it's like, oh, what do old people do? Play bingo, play bridge, maybe Scrabble. It's like garden.
That's cool. Those things are fun.
Yeah. Jingai says a story doesn't have to be good. A story also doesn't have to be good. That's true.
It doesn't need to be a story. It doesn't need to be anything.
That's probably true. Yeah, I'm always skeptical of any hard and fast rules because usually the exception works. And if you try to eliminate for that, like for instance, if I think too much in terms of, yes, but it's subjective, but we're going to treat it like it's objective because it's very important. You can actually miss opportunities, and sometimes it helps to do the opposite of that. Like, I think this is how a story should be told. Could I tell it differently, and would it still make sense? And maybe the answer is yes. And then, in that case, it's good that you weren't so dogmatic, I guess, because you get to benefit from different ideas. Okay. Beyond Lazy asks, does your iterative drawing video still hold up? Anything you would like to add to it or change? Yeah, I would like to add a lot of things and change a lot of things. It holds up in some ways. I think every video I made was something that at that time it was important. So sometimes people might tell you, you need to do this to get good. But it's too broad because in any discipline, what you have to do changes dependent on what stage you are and what problems you're facing and what you want to do. So I don't know. When it comes to iterative drawing, I use it sometimes, but I don't use it as much as I used to because now I'll do more straight up just copying or tracing, or I will just try to, I don't know, look more, observe more, think more. But yeah, it wouldn't, like the same things just don't apply. So I think it's easier to conceptualize for me in terms of getting fit, or like, let's say you were into bodybuilding. If someone tells you right in the beginning, oh, you should do like pull-ups and stuff because that's very good, body weight exercises. But if you're super overweight, and you don't have any muscles, this could be dangerous for you to do these exercises. Like maybe at first you need to build your cardio. You need to do some walking and then jogging and then sprinting and stuff, and just build your heart up so you can do those things, and you sort of ease into it. So what would be good for you now might be completely different from what will be good for you in the future, and it's not the same advice that you would give. So yeah.
Alrighty. Met A. Christensen, I hope I said that right, said, how old are all of you? I am 22. Nick is 23. Sycra is
39.
39. I'm 37.
31.
There we go. I'm in an odd spot and I can't relate with a generation 1 year younger than me. Are you pretty young? Because I noticed that the generational gap is like extremely short lately because people are so locked into their small like internet bubbles that like what a 17-year-old versus like a 19-year-old consume online based on like what's popular and whatnot is completely different. So you end up having like gaps in knowledge of popular culture and ideas between like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, I think for me, I never related to my own generation either, though. Just didn't fit in. And then the people I could talk to were much older than me usually.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Paideia says, I'm speaking on a fundamental level of writing character arcs or something that many people like, but not having it won't break anything, whereas if A equals B but later A equals C without an explanation, it will. Yeah, you need the explanation, for sure. But you can do things in weird ways, like Memento. I really like Memento, it's my favorite movie. And that does not do things in a traditional way of character design. Or not characters, what am I talking about? Of story progression. But it still works. So there's different ways of making things work.
There's always the Twin Peaks way of going full abstract and symbolism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But disguising it.
It's so many things that as you learn more, you realize like these things. Because I used to be pretty. I kind of believed in objective things. I would get frustrated when I was younger with abstract art and things because I felt like this isn't what I want to learn. This is like it's not following the principles of art and stuff. But I think eventually you grow to understand that everything's way more complicated. And even when you say something like, "Oh, this makes sense to people," like just in the world, if I'm walking with Flavia and we see something, we won't see the same thing. So for instance, let's say we walked outside. If there's a giant billboard with flashing lights, that's what I will see. Flavia will probably see like a cat in a bush super far away that's like completely blended in, and that's the first thing she'll notice. And someone could argue like, well, the billboards are objectively what a human would see because humans we're built to notice these things. And it's like, but that's like, it's actually just not confirmed. Like, no, there are always exceptions. So if you think of it in terms of like, well, in general, yes, that makes sense. But then you can't think it's objective because it's like, no, it's just a generalization. And generalizations aren't objective. Because, everyone has, like, the average American household has 2.1 or 3.4 members in it or something. It's like, what? So there's a fourth of a person in every house? No. So, I don't know. Nictus says, what? I thought y'all were in your early 20s. No, some of us are. Some of us are not.
They're just all so hip that you could never tell.
Yeah. I think if we think about mental age, I would be in the younger generation. But yeah. If we think of mentality, I don't know. I think not. Alex says the three marmots taking a selfie is super cute. Yeah, I agree. I like it.
I agree.
Okay, a Sycra cat. At some point in the past, I stopped using reference when I draw. How can I relearn / get used to using reference? Somehow my brain thinks using reference is cheating. How can I lose this mindset? Like, it's not. It's just, maybe if you see enough people who are professional, everyone pretty much uses reference, because it's not cheating, it's more supplemental. It's like, well, I'll remember certain things about any given thing, but I might miss some details, and reference will give me those details. And what do I get from having those extra details? I get believability. So when I think of, like, let's say you were watching a historical movie that's like a period piece set like 400 years ago, but then someone's wearing like a watch that's like anachronistic and it just doesn't fit in, or in the background there's a smartphone. Okay, that broke it. Okay, so reference would be like, do your research, figure out what they actually had, and then people are more likely to believe in what you create because you're using that. So even if I think, like, there is no shame in giving yourself a reminder of what things actually are. If you make a grocery list, it doesn't mean you're bad because you refer to, like, oh yeah, what was I going to buy again? Because when I got to the store, I kind of got disoriented or overwhelmed, or I forgot. It's like, no one's going to be like, oh my god, you made a list of all the things you needed to buy. That's bad. No, it's, so using reference, a lot of times you just pick up things. Like, I was drawing something with bows and arrows, like a bow with arrows and a quiver. And I was looking at I did it from imagination first, and that's fine, you get your placement down. But then I was looking at reference for arrows and a quiver, and I realized, like, first of all, modern arrows have a different shape at the end, the feathers. They have a different shape than, like, the cliche idea. Secondly, the way the feathers are wrapped, it's like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't actually think of that well enough. So by getting that correct, what it means is if someone does know something about archery, they will appreciate the detail, the effort you put in, and for them it becomes more believable. So it heightens I can get lost in this world because it doesn't conflict with what I already know is true of the world. And reference can really help with that. It's why I started also, like, deviating from my idea of, when I was doing pointy chins, I was kind of in I want to figure out what I like. So I was focusing heavily on aesthetics and appeal and shape design and things like this. And now I don't so much, because my focus is more not on creating an image that is aesthetically pleasing to my tastes, but rather in creating a story or world that people can believe in, that seems to be internally consistent. I find that more interesting, but then I still can add appeal on top of that. It's just not the most important thing. Okay, let's do some, like, lightning fast replies. Okay, so Brian asks, or no, Johan asks, if I flip the canvas and something looks weird, have I effed up, or could it be that I'm just used to the other orientation? Yeah, you're used to the other orientation, so it's important to flip. So I flip a lot because I just want to make sure everything is looking good. It should look good, like both ways. So it's a good way of checking, because you get used to everything. Like, you'll get used to value ranges. If your values are too close, but you're staring at the image long enough, you will adjust your vision to make those values appear more contrasty than they actually are. So breaks are good for this reason. Like, give your eyes a chance to rest, or get feedback from someone else that you trust to look at your image and, like, is this okay? Okay. Then, yeah, Alex Smith, you may feel like using reference is cheating because you're copying the reference instead of using it as inspiration for drawing the thing you're trying to draw. Yeah, Exactly. You have to interpret your reference, and Brian said that as well. You need to interpret it. Drawing is the interpretation of form with line and tone, and that's also why learn things like learn why a thing works, and you will have built a story in your head of that you can then use to make all your future things. Like you'll learn basic concepts. So if you understand about pressure, high and low pressure, you understand about heat and things like that, you can apply that to so many things, and then you can make things way more believable. If you understand, we were talking before about like center of gravity and balance and gesture. If you can understand that conceptually, like the physics of it, you can then apply that to many things. And maybe you don't want the character to be always balanced. Like you might, if you think obsessively and you think, oh, I have to make sure every character is balanced, like, but when a person runs, they're off balance. And that's on purpose, so that you're just catching yourself constantly from falling. So being off balance isn't even wrong. It's just, are you doing this intentionally because you know what you're doing, or were you meaning for this to be balanced, but then it just ended up not being balanced? Okay, well, that's all we have time for. So, thanks for the questions, guys. And I think this piece turned out really amazing.
Yeah, it's my favorite one so far.
Very cool.
Nice work, everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to go ahead and thank my guests today, Bob, Flavia, Nick, and Alpaki. And thanks everyone, whether you're watching this live or recorded later on. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next week, I hope. Take care. Bye.